The Halloween Ripper. Halloween is usually a fun, joyous time of year in most towns and cities across the country. Families taking the children trick-or-treating, parties, haunted houses, just good old Halloween fun. But not here. Not in my town. In my town of Black Falls, Halloween is a dangerous day. A day you should fear and stay inside if you know what is good for you. There's a serial killer that stalks the streets of our town, but they only kill on Halloween. For the past 10 years, this killer takes 2 or 3 victims every Halloween night. There's never been any leads or clues left behind of who this killer might be. They may be a local or an outsider who stalks our neighborhood streets. The police continue to urge the citizens of our town to stay inside and not go out. But people continue not to listen. The streets aren't as packed as they once were, but you'll still see people and families venture out into the night to have their Halloween fun. Chief Reynolds and the town elders urge you all, please stay inside this Halloween night. And if you're forced to venture outside your homes, please do so in a group or in pairs. Next up, the weather. But first, an update on a story we had for you last night. The disappearance of a local couple that were last seen leaving a Halloween party, but haven't been seen or heard from since. Their car was discovered alongside Jefferson Road, approximately 10 miles from their home. If you have any information, please contact the police station immediately. You will not be forced to give your name or address. They still have no fucking clue who I am. You two, I'm afraid, aren't long for this world. Horrible luck for you, but excellent luck for me. Here I was, sitting in my car, wondering if I should start up my Halloween fun early this year. And I spot you two, pulling to the side of the road, drunk, and about to have some naughty fun. I hope you enjoyed that Halloween party, because it's going to be your last. Quiet. Stop your whimpering. That won't help you now. Take comfort in the fact that you two won't be the only victims on this Halloween. It's going to be my most gruesome of them all. Once again, it's time for this town to say hello to the Halloween Ripper. The only night of the year. No, please! That's when I plunged my dagger into her side. She let out a pained squeal that could only be compared to a piglet being tortured. Smiling, I twisted the hilt as she started to go limp. Then she came back to life. We're gonna really give these kids something to shout about. Like, come on, a fake knife with a freaking retractable blade? I nodded my head giddily and said, tonight's the only night of the year we can get away with this. I just hope you don't lose your voice from all the screaming you'll be doing tonight, both down here and upstairs. I followed it up with a coy wink. She gasped, but her smile gave away that she was more excited than offended by my comment. She moved into the kitchen to prepare. I stepped out onto the front porch to have my final cigarette of the night. As it started to get dark, our street finally began to come alive with costumed kiddos. Across the street, I noticed what must have been the Robinsons' first visitor leaving their house. It was too dark to make out what the little guy's costume was, but I saw he was carrying 2 buckets, shaped like jack-o'-lanterns, one in each hand. He must have made a killing so far, because some treats spilled out of the buckets and onto the sidewalk with every step he took. He didn't stop by our place. He just walked slowly down our road and turned at Guerrero Street. Thankfully, our frightful night commenced soon after, as our first group of trick-or-treaters made their way into our front yard. We played it to perfection. She'd give the kids their treats. Then, as she was about to bid them farewell, I'd pop out from behind the doorframe and stick the fake blade into her throat. The kids ran off terrified, as my scream queen feigned a painful death. As they ran, I'd shout, "Happy Halloween!" We must have done the prank successfully 30 times before the crowd thinned out and we called it a night. She and I were cleaning up when we heard a knock on our door. I answered. "Hi, officer. If this is about our little prank, it's just—" "Sir," he said sternly, "your neighbors across the street have been murdered. Did you see anything suspicious tonight?" Across the street, I saw another cop using a flashlight to illuminate a crimson-red trail on the sidewalk, which he followed down our road and onto Guerrero Street. He continued, "The sick fuck chopped them up with an axe and left us everything but their heads. We have 9 witnesses who reported seeing a kid in an orange jumpsuit earlier tonight, carrying 2 severed heads down Guerrero Street with him, but they thought it was all his costume. Tonight's the only night of the year he could have gotten away with this." Until next year, Halloween 2022. As soon as the fall equinox arrives, I start to develop a twitch under my left eye. It builds and builds until it gets so bad that it feels like someone has decided to take a nail gun and point it through my nostril at the exact angle needed to pull all of the skin on that side of my face towards my ear. Sharp and unpredictable, it makes me a real sight when I'm trying to function out in public. It's always the decorations that do me in. The first jack-o'-lantern, sometimes it's a pumpkin that hasn't even been carved, I come across, sends these subliminal signals to my brain, and before I know it, that awful twitch is back. See, I know it's just around the corner, the day I dread the most, Halloween, because I know she'll be back. Unlike my neighbors, I leave my lights out, not just the ones on the porch, but in every room. I make 100 passes to make sure they're out. But no matter how vigilant I am, I always end up with an unwelcomed guest. When the porch steps creak, I find myself holding my breath at the peephole. She's there, again. Her costume never changes. Each year it is more decrepit. She knows I'm there. She knows I'm watching. But she ignores my presence and makes herself comfortable in my rocking chair. She picks up the bowl, a bowl that wasn't there before her arrival, and waits patiently. Trick-or-treaters line up, waves of Bowsers and Fortnite characters holding up their buckets and pillowcases. I pound on the door and scream from inside my home, but they can't hear me. They never do. Delicately, she plucks a piece of candy from the bowl, and they collect. She gives a smile, a grin that grows with each consecutive customer. Each group ends with her looking at me, taunting me through the peephole. The schism in my face flares, and I clutch it as I pound at the door. The ones in groups are safe. Her prize is chosen particularly, no matter how hard I protest. Behind the door, they cannot heed my warnings. On the porch, they can't hear me scream. I know it's coming, just as it always does. She smiles at me and waits, knowing the candidate is not far off. Through patience, she is rewarded. The lone customer, usually one too old to be braving the streets with the others. No others to witness, no parents to police. Like the ones before, a treat is presented. And with that, a trick. Despite my shouts, she's on them instantly. An explosion from her mouth. What's left of her tongue strikes with piercing barbs as she feasts. Helpless I watch, an offering that not only eases my affliction, but cures her decrepit state. My face relaxes. Her skin regains its porcelain shrine. Corpse in tow, she slips away, as if it never happened. Until next year. The Pumpkinhead Twins. 2 weeks until Halloween. They stand side by side in the thrift store seasonal section. They have plastic jack-o'-lantern pumpkins for heads and wiry statue bodies, clad in simple costumes. The twins are truly a matching set. Having been in this store for the past 3 Halloweens, growing restless, they're beginning to lose hope. Until a woman walks by and sees them, that is. "Oh, these are perfect," she remarks, glancing at the faded price stickers. "And so cheap." Without another word, she scoops the pumpkin heads and buys them for $6 a pop. In the trunk of the car, on the way to their new home, they are silent. They know better than to speak in such a circumstance. Despite not being able to thank the nice woman, they are both grateful. 1 week until Halloween. They stand side by side in the woman's front yard, among foam tombstones, fake cobwebs, and countless plastic skeletons. The nice woman's daughter comes back from her dad's house for the week, and is delighted to see the new additions to the decor. The girl is 7 years old, and scarcely as tall as the Pumpkinheads themselves. She decides they need names, and dubs the one in a black dress and pointed hat Witchy. Likewise, the one in a skeleton onesie gets the name Skelly. The twins are grateful for their new names, but must remind themselves not to say anything. Halloween night. They still stand side by side in the yard, witness to a growing stream of trick-or-treaters. The nice girl stays a while, dressed up in a skeleton onesie and pointed hat. "A skele-witch," she calls it, "like both the Pumpkinheads." At some point, the nice woman locks the door and goes off to enjoy the night with her daughter, leaving a bowl of candy whose take one sign is almost always ignored. A lone child dressed as a glittery fairy walks up to the porch to take a share of sweets. "That one?" Skilly asks in a low whisper. "No," Witchy replies. "I think that's one of the nice girl's friends." More time goes by, as do more children. A little one dressed as a dinosaur toddles to the porch, lollipop in mouth. "That one?" Skilly asks again, impatiently. "Absolutely not. That one's too small. Wait a little longer," Witchy says. The night continues, and soon it's completely dark. The nice woman and nice girl aren't back yet. Lights in the other houses start to go out. For a moment, the twins worry they'd miss their chance. Then a young boy arrives whose costume is pitiful. A cowboy hat, a toy gun, and a too big shirt with horses on it. "What about that one?" "Yes, that one will do." And so they feast, taking equal shares of meat and organs, as any fair siblings would. After 3 long years, the twins finally get to feed. And they are very grateful for that. I am not myself. Simone is a traitor, apparently, so here I am, all alone on Halloween, looking pathetic in my Scarlet Witch costume. She was supposed to come over almost 2 hours ago, but she hasn't showed up or responded to my texts. The original plan was that she would make a quick pit stop at Dan's house, my ex-boyfriend Dan, who is hosting a giant Halloween party with his new and much more popular girlfriend, Haley. Simone was going to make an appearance, take some pictures of the best and worst costumes, and then come over. But I guess she figured she would rather hang out with basically everybody else in our high school instead. So much for my best friend. When the doorbell rings, I sigh. But when I open my door, there's a werewolf slouching on my porch. He lifts off his mask, and it's the last person I would have expected. Haley's ex, Jackson. "I wasn't invited either," he says. "So how about you head out with me and raise some hell?" I've heard lots of stories about Jackson, most involving borderline to full-on criminal behavior. But I am just so angry. "Sure, why not?" I say. I quickly change into anonymous black sweats and follow him out to his car, where he hands me a killer clown mask. I am not myself. Since I'm not me, I'm not scared, as Jackson drives too fast, playing music too loud. We find one of the last straggling groups of trick-or-treaters, older kids. Jackson leaps out of the car. He's holding a maybe prop, maybe real, chainsaw and switches it on. The weapon he gave me is just a hatchet. I compensate by giving a high, hooting giggle and swinging the hatchet around wildly. Sparks fly when it strikes the curb. The kids drop their candy and run. Our next visit is to Mrs. Waller, the meanest teacher in our middle school. She gets graffiti. "Greetings from hell. Still better than living with you. Ben Waller." That was Mrs. Waller's husband, dead in a drunk driving crash that took 3 others with him. Nobody is home at Haley's house, so we smash a window and walk on in. Jackson said targeting her room in particular would make it obvious, so we push over a glass-fronted credenza full of china figurines and fling a couple of potted houseplants at the TV until it cracks. All that was just the warm-up. We both know where we were going and what we were going to do once we got there. We start collecting jack-o'-lanterns on our way and pick up a couple of bales of straw from the pumpkin farm stand on Main Street. We line up the jack-o'-lanterns around the house, stuffing each one with straw, soaking the straw with gasoline, and tossing the match. Jackson and I go back to his car to watch. It's beautiful. It makes me smile. With stolen beer and stolen candy, we toast the rising flames. I almost never have trick-or-treaters over. I sighed as I spent yet another Halloween snacking from the candy bowl as trick-or-treaters failed to show up. I began to wonder what was wrong with me, thinking there must have been a reason no one ever came over. At least, that's what I was thinking until I heard voices approach. I peeked through the window curtain to find 3 boys standing on my lawn. One was dressed as a skeleton, the second was in circus ringleader getup, and the third hadn't dressed up at all. They talked in nervous whispers, casting glances of suspicion in every direction as they continued up the front walk. Then they stopped, as if afraid to go any closer to my house. They were frozen there, much to my annoyance, so I got up, grabbed the candy bowl, and opened the door to see what they wanted. "Whoa! Did you see that? The door just opened by itself." I stood there for a second, stunned. Why the insensitive prank? My blood began to boil. It was just my luck that the first visitors I'd had in a while ended up being jerks. "Maybe the house wants you to go in, Chris," the third boy moaned, shoving the ringleader toward my house. The skeleton laughed. No way," he cried, sliding out of the other boy's grasp. "Maybe the breeze opened the door," the skeleton said thoughtfully. "What the hell?" I shouted. "This stupid joke of yours isn't funny." In a rage, I grabbed the skeleton and shook him hard. "Help! Me!" he shouted to his horrified friends. The 2 boys just stood there trembling. I let go of him. Screw this!" he shouted, and the 3 boys ran off into the night. I sighed and headed back into the house. I resumed my normal position by the door and waited. I almost never have trick-or-treaters over. Though it's been a few decades, I continue to sit here all alone. Maybe something is wrong with me. Halloween with friends. Halloween has been my favorite holiday since I was little, but lately things have been a lot less fun. It was different before, when I was a teenager, and me and my friends would spend all month planning for the day. Jessie always knew where the craziest parties were. Gina had to have the sexiest costumes, and Hallie was just along for the vibe. It was a tradition every year. Now everyone's too busy to even pick up the phone for me. Thinking about it now makes me angry. I've called Hallie over 100 times this week. She still hasn't picked up. Maybe she's still upset about the knife I pulled on her. It was just once. 5 years ago. It wasn't that big of a deal. I just got a little angry. Everyone gets angry sometimes. I spend most of my time alone in a shitty studio apartment with rusty piping and crumbling walls, still thinking of the past. I miss living with Gina. She was loud and giddy, always wanting to be good to others, a loyal friend. I was shocked the day she kicked me out. She didn't even have the balls to tell me to my face. She said she was afraid. She said my sleepwalking was starting to scare her. Before it was just walking to the kitchen and opening the fridge. The next, I'm standing in the corner of her room, smiling and holding a garbage bag. That wasn't my fault. I just wasn't in control of my body. Sometimes it does what it wants to do. That's not wrong. I miss the pretty smile she always had on her face. I've never once seen her sad. I wonder what she looks like when she cries. I never leave the house, and it's been years since I last smiled. I used to smile a lot when I was with Jessie. I had the biggest crush on him for years. We would always wear matching Halloween costumes. People would always mistake us for dating, but he would be quick to deny it. I think he was just too shy to admit he liked me. He always dated other girls just to make me jealous, but I knew the truth. I still have all the gifts he gave me over the years. He wasn't too happy about me using a rope to sneak into his room when he wasn't home. But I only took a few things, gifts he would have given to me eventually. I haven't seen him in 4 years, 6 months, and 2 days. But I know he still cares for me. I can feel it. This year is going to be different. This year, I'm going to show them all how fun Halloween can truly be together. I'm going to visit them one by one. A knife for Hallie, a garbage bag for Gina, and a rope for Jessie. It's going to be just like old times again. Smoke and candy. The man didn't want to laugh at his daughter, but she looked so cute when she was angry. She sat on her bed with her arms crossed, a pout drawn across her face. Her broken leg was propped up on pillows. It was in a pink cast covered in drawings and signatures from her friends. "Sweetheart, I know you're upset. You can't go trick-or-treating this year," the man said patiently. "But I'll tell you what. I'll give you all the leftover candy from what I hand out tonight. Does that sound good?" He expected this news to get a smile out of his daughter, but her pout turned into something else. Something he had never seen on her face before. Something like determination. "I want that candy, so we better not get any trick-or-treaters tonight. Not one single trick-or-treater." The man decided to leave his daughter's room without another word. When she was in a mood, it was best to let it play out. He went downstairs and put on the TV, but kept the volume low so he could hear any knocking at the door. He skipped around the channels, not paying attention to what he was watching. At some point, he fell asleep. The man woke with a start. He glanced at the clock. It was too late for trick-or-treaters. How strange. He'd been living in this neighborhood for years, and he'd always gotten at least a handful. Even last year when it was raining, the kids came out with umbrellas. Oh well, it was good news for his daughter. He went to get the giant bowl of candy and bring it to her. He knew he shouldn't be giving her so much sugar, but she deserved a treat. That's when he noticed it. The smell of smoke in the air. It tickled the back of his throat, as if he had eaten a burned piece of candy. There was a flicker of light in one of the windows. Something was happening outside. The man ran to his front door, threw it open, and discovered his front lawn was on fire. He stood outside dumbfounded, the flames only a few feet away from him. How was this possible? The front lawn had no trees or shrubs that might dry out and catch fire. He heard something above. He looked up and discovered his daughter leaning out of her bedroom window. She threw something to the ground. It smacked against the earth, broke, and spread a wide circle of flames. The man's brain was slow and stupid from shock. It took him a long moment to realize it was a flaming bottle. It appeared there were several others, as the lawn glittered with hot glass. The man's daughter, still hanging out the window, noticed her father below. She smiled at him and said, "Oh, hi, Dad. Come bring me my candy." Jack. The man moved quietly, his eyes peering over his bushy, unkempt beard, scanning the field around him. I laid, cowering, in a patch of thick grass and fallen leaves. A cool autumn breeze blew through, and I watched the man shiver. He turned, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I was safe. I was wrong. He had spotted me out of the corner of his eye, and before I knew it, he had grabbed me and began to carry me away from my hiding place. With a grunt, he tossed me into the trunk of his car, and I plunged into total darkness as he slammed it shut. I laid there for what seemed like hours, left only to my thoughts of what horrors awaited me, until finally I felt the car come to a stop. The trunk was thrown open, and I was greeted with the man's horrible face looming above. He pulled me out of the rusty car and embarked on the walk towards his house. He carried me into his kitchen and placed me on the table. I laid there, petrified by fear, as he unsheathed a large kitchen knife from its block and began to sharpen it. I couldn't make a sound as he approached me, newly sharpened knife in hand, and started to cut me open. Through pure agony, I watched him slowly slice to get to the inside. He set the knife down beside me, and although I thought I would be dead soon anyway, I was still relieved that whatever the psychopath was doing to me was over. That is, until he reached inside of me with his bare hands. Grabbing my guts by the fistful, he pulled them out and placed them into a bowl beside me. Wiping his hands off, he picked up the knife again. He grabbed me with one strong hand to hold me still, and started to carve away at my face. He moved from the top down, starting with my eyes, followed by my nose, and finally ending with my mouth. He placed these pieces in the same bowl as my guts. He looked at me with a sense of pride, and then released his tight grip and left the room. I had no choice but to wait for what he would do next. Seconds later, he came back into the room and lifted me up again. He carried me back out the front of the house, and instead of taking me back to his car, he sat me down on his front porch. Reaching into the deep pocket of his jeans, he pulled out a box of matches. He lit one and crouched down next to me. As he moved the flame closer, I expected that I was about to be lit on fire. However, he subverted my expectations again by reaching into the pocket of his coat and producing a candle. He lit the candle and reached inside of me and placed it down. He stood up and went back inside, leaving me stranded on the porch. Here I have stayed, greeting the trick-or-treaters with my permanent carved smile as they come up to the house seeking candy, blissfully unaware of the horrors that I had to endure inside it. Thank you so much for joining me. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess_of.darkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. Also, please send me your stories or poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. Until next time.